after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Liam Barwick. We're back for another episode of Moving the Goalposts. You can follow us on social media at this show at MTGP ETB on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart, Liam at LiamMTGP. You can follow the show. You can follow all the Empty the Bench shows on YouTube, on youtube.com/ETB Network. You can find all the Empty the Bench Network podcasts on etbpodcast.com. You can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe. And, of course, we are presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Okay, so there's a lot going on with, NBA free agency has cooled down a little bit, but there's still a bit going on, I would say, and a bit with Team USA. I do want to talk about Paul George a little bit and the Clippers. Paul George says he felt disrespected by the offers that the Clippers gave him, last year, little under a year ago, before the end of his contract. I don't know if you saw the podcast clip, and he ended up getting a much better deal in Philadelphia. Was it like 4 years, $212 million? Like a crazy type of deal. And honestly, like this is one of those stories where it's like, it on some level, like, since so many athletes have podcasts now, everybody has athletes have podcasts, which was not a thing even a decade ago. So you're hearing from athletes directly, which we're not used to. And to me, it's like, I understand his perspective a little bit because he knows he can get more money. But I think the story to me is not so much about Paul George. It's more about the Clippers and their incompetence in this whole thing. Because if you think about it for a second, it's like, okay, you can't spend, like, they would be spending an insane amount of money if they were to give Paul George the amount of money that he was able to get from Philadelphia. And the thing is, I know Paul George, he didn't want to leave LA. He would rather have stayed with the Clippers and lived in LA because he's from LA, and he'd rather live in LA and maybe hopefully win a championship with the Clippers and with Kawhi and Harden. But they were just not willing to pay him, the Clippers, and there were talks of them trading him, before the end of the season last year, and there were some deals on the table, and apparently Lawrence Frank really just wanted at least 2 first-round picks for Paul George. To me, here's what it tells me about the Clippers. The Clippers are kind of like the Mets. of the NBA. They're a typical little brother team that is completely incompetent, and they don't know what they're doing. The Paul George, Kawhi Leonard era ultimately was a complete failure. They haven't made it past the first round in 3 years. So this was supposed to be sort of like a quasi super team. I don't know. I mean, I think the term super team is a little overused in a sense because everybody's sort of called a super team. But 3 big names, or at least for the most part, it was 2 big names. But if they had paid Paul George, I mean, just think of what a waste it would have been if they had paid Paul George what the Sixers ended up paying him, given the Clippers situation that you're paying for a bunch of guys that are always hurt. And I mean, James Harden's a superstar, and he doesn't win when it matters. He's not good when it matters, and hasn't in a very long time. Paul George is hurt frequently, although last year he wasn't. Kawhi Leonard also hurt frequently, and you're just they would have ended up basically throwing money down the toilet. But to me, the biggest thing is the fact that they just let Paul George walk for nothing. They let him walk for absolutely nothing when they could have actually made a trade. So I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts on this were.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I think you kind of said 2 different things there at the same time. You said that they were incompetent, and then said that that they would have been wrong to give him the money. So,
well, just because they were incompetent doesn't mean they didn't make the right decision.
Well, also, I think they thought that they could go to the championship. That's why they didn't trade him, and they probably could have. I mean, the team that they lost to in the first round went to the championship, and they lost that series because they had their best player hurt. I think different than what'd you say, the Mets? That you said they were like the Mets. The one thing that didn't work with the Clippers is that they just had a lot of injuries. I mean, I think they could have been a really good team if they weren't just constantly injured. I mean, Kawhi Leonard is constantly injured, and that's a big problem. So I don't know how much it had to do with incompetence, whether that it had to do with that they're just injured all the time. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if he was. I disagree that he was disrespected. I mean, I think that the offer Philly gave him was just a lot more than probably he's worth. It's probably not going to be a great contract going towards the end, and it was a lot of money, especially in a cap league. So I don't think that I don't think that it was disrespect more than it was Philly kind of maybe over-respected him.
Yeah, I think that's another way to put it. I mean, I think when he says he felt it was disrespected, I think he meant more like, oh, I can get more money elsewhere. I think that's really what it was. I think that's really what. And now, just because you can get a lot of money elsewhere doesn't mean they're necessarily making the right decision. It could be like, I mean, I think on one hand, overall, I would say it was a net positive for the Sixers for them to sign Paul George. But they are taking a fairly big risk. Like, if they don't win a championship with Paul George, it is very, I'm not saying it's championship this year or bust, but it really is championship or bust within the next 4 years, and that Paul George is on the Sixers. And I mean, Paul George is 34 years old. Mm-hmm. It's not that old, but you have to remember professional athletes tend to age pretty quickly. And and Paul George does have a history of a lot of injuries, and that could be a lot worse within the next couple of years for all we know. To me, my thing in sports is I think it's good to be bold and make big moves. And like I would rather err on the side of being bold and going after the big players. The Mets, they went after like 40-year-old pitchers. Like you can make wrong moves, obviously, that defy common sense. I don't think that's what ended up happening in this case. And to me, it's like, yeah, I agree with you. It's not really disrespectful just because he could have gotten a better deal elsewhere. It was just, given the Clippers' current situation, it would have been really stupid for them to pay him all that money.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, like the whole era was just a complete total failure. I mean, they're just. I mean, I obviously understand a lot of it was because of injuries, but ultimately, it really just didn't pan out. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, he is a great player. He won 2 NBA Finals, won 2 Finals MVPs, but his reputation has gone from being like a winner, kind of, to being sort of like a typical unavailable sort of diva in a sense in the NBA. I feel like his reputation really has taken a big hit since his time, at least since he won with the Raptors. I mean, there were some of the shenanigans going on with Kawhi Leonard when he was on the Spurs towards the very end, I would say. When remember he was like going out, he was like hiding out in the 2018 season. At the end of the 2018 season, and nobody knew where he was, and it was just a whole big thing. But yeah, his reputation is just. I feel like his reputation has just completely. Kawhi Leonard's reputation has, in recent years, completely nosedived.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's now, has a reputation of a player that's hurt all the time, and he's still one of the best players when he's healthy. It's just he's never healthy. So
yeah, that's right. That's the problem. Speaking of, I mean, also just given like just the Sixers situation, to go back to that for a second, I feel like teams in the East are very much. I think that the mindset of teams in the East and the West right now is a little bit different, because the West, I feel like, is a little bit more wide open every year. Like, if I were to tell you next year how good, like, what is where a team's gonna end up at the end of the season in the West, it would be a lot harder to guess, I would say. I mean, you can make a good guess. You can make an educated guess. You can say that the Timberwolves, the Nuggets, whoever.
right,
Oklahoma City, maybe.
yeah,
But like you can make an educated guess, but it's very much a wild card, I think, in the West right now. Whereas the East is much more the haves and the have-nots. It's much more, and by the haves and the have-nots, I mean the Celtics and everybody else, at least going into the season. So everybody is trying to be like I know a lot of Knicks fans, not just Knicks fans, really, just people in general, talking about Mikal Bridges, and how the Knicks are like a big threat to the Celtics. Ultimately, like, the Celtics are inarguably the team to beat, and who everybody's trying to catch up with, which is part of the reason I think the Sixers made this move. And if they had a Paul George who was able to play like 70 games last year, I mean, they're probably a better team than the Knicks, and they're probably at least a bigger threat to the Celtics. Whereas the Clippers, they're in the West. It's just a different sort of mindset. It's just I think that their mindset is just different. Not to mention the fact they'd be wasting so much more money.
right. No, yeah, I agree. I think that they were never going to pay him that money anyway, so I don't think that
you can't pay everybody. They just paid James Harden.
Right. Yeah, it's a cap sport, so.
Yeah, it's a cap sport, so you can't pay everybody. Speaking of Kawhi Leonard, by the way, he was on Team USA basketball, and he basically, it seems like they mutually agreed that that he was gonna be off the team. So here's what. Hold on a second. Here's I have the statement in front of me. Okay, so here's the statement. Kawhi from Team USA from the Team USA's men's national team. Kawhi has been ramping up for the Olympics over the past several weeks and had a few strong practices in Las Vegas. He felt ready to compete. However, he respects that USA Basketball and the Clippers determined it's in his best interest to spend the remainder of the summer preparing for the upcoming season rather than participating in the Olympic Games in Paris. So he's not on Team USA. And from reading this statement, now this statement is not throwing anybody under the bus, but it's fairly obvious to me that it was the Clippers who said that they didn't want him playing on Team USA. it just by process of elimination, it's fair. Just by process of elimination, it is fairly obvious that it was the Clippers, because obviously, if it was in Kawhi Leonard's best interest, he would have made that decision, or to not play on the team. He doesn't need other people to determine that for him, and it's obviously not in Team USA's best interest. It's obviously the Clippers. It's in their best interest for him not to be playing on Team USA, because they're like, hey, man, we're paying you over $50 million a year and you're injured all the time. There is no reason at all for you to be playing in the Olympics, which I think is completely understandable, because ultimately he's their employee and he's the one. They're the ones who write his checks. So obviously he has to abide by their rules. It would be absolutely, to me, I agree completely with this. It would be ridiculous if he was playing on Team USA. He just is never healthy enough. And by the way, Team USA, they're going to kill everybody anyway.
That's not true at all. That's not even close to true. They're not going to kill any. Not even close. They lost the World Cup.
You don't think they're going to?
No, not even close.
Who's going to?
They'll be the favorites, but they're not going to kill everybody.
Okay, well, who's going to be close? Canada,
France.
That's true. France
is really good, and France is the home team.
Who's on France?
Wemby, the guy that they just picked first. I forget his name.
Sarr? No, not Sarr. So a bunch of young guys.
They're really good. France is good. Canada's really good. No, it's not a given that they're going to win the
okay, that's fair.
But Serbia obviously is going to be very good.
Well, they only have Jokic.
Yeah, but it's basketball though. You can just have one person.
Right, but who else?
Isn't even the biggest. This isn't
right,
even
but who's going to be on Serbia? Who else is going to be on Serbia other than Jokic? He's the only Serbian player.
But you could, one guy can take over the whole game.
Right, but not if they have not if their supporting cast is really bad and he's playing against a bunch of other superstars on Team USA.
But this isn't even the part of the story that's interesting. This part, the part of the story that was interesting was they picked to replace him. They picked Derek White instead of Jaylen Brown because Jaylen Brown has been critical of Nike in the past.
Okay, yeah, you make a good point. I was going to bring that up, by the way. Why Derek White replaced him was beyond me. How do you know that it's because he was critical of Nike?
Well, I don't know that, but it's a good. Why would you put Derek White, a guy on the same team, versus a guy who just won the Finals MVP on the same team?
I mean, Jaylen Brown is undoubtedly a better player than Derek White. I don't understand the reason, and that might be true. My only question is, what does Nike have to do with anything? Or they just
they are the big sponsors of Team USA.
That's the only reason?
Yes.
Look, that's possible. I guess it's possible. I mean, that is a reasonable explanation. I don't know why exactly that they would pick Derek White over Jaylen Brown, but it's obviously not for their style of play because Jaylen Brown is obviously a superior player. It's not just because he won Finals MVP. He's just everybody agrees that he's a better player.
Right.
Yeah. So, but by the way, another thing, Kawhi Leonard, if he's not on team, if he's not playing, Joel Embiid shouldn't be playing either.
Joel Embiid shouldn't be playing on Team USA in the first place. It's fucking ridiculous, but whatever.
Well, you're saying because he wasn't born in the USA?
Yeah, he's not American.
But I will defend him for a second. He's a U.S. citizen. He is a U.S. citizen.
Yeah,
second of all, I don't know how it works in the Olympics exactly. Well, I don't know how it works in the Olympics. I know that in things like the World Baseball Classic, for instance, you don't have to actually be a citizen of the team of the country that you're playing for.
But that's also because they couldn't. That's also because they couldn't field any other teams if they didn't do that.
Right. Well, the players, they wouldn't get much playing time. But like, you're right. Although even Puerto Rico does that, and they have a lot of and there's a lot of Puerto Rican baseball players who are like.
Well, Puerto Rico's not even a country. But yeah.
Right. I guess technically that's true. But the point is that, I mean, but like, if you look at most of the teams, like Italy, it's all Italian American players, no actual like Italians from Italy. Mexico, it's mostly Americans on Team Mexico, and Randy Arozarena, who just defected to Mexico. That's just how it works in the World Baseball Classic.
That's because nobody else plays baseball.
Right. Basketball is different. Although Joel Embiid is from Cameroon. Are there a lot of Cameroonian basketball players?
No, but still, he could. Yeah.
Well, the reason he's on, but I don't think you have to be. I mean, Patrick Ewing, he was born in Jamaica. He played on Team USA, so I guess it's kind of the same thing. He was on the Dream Team. I guess it's sort of the same thing. I don't know how it works for playing on Team like what country you represent.
Yeah.
But either way, I was just going to say, if Kawhi Leonard is not on, if Kawhi Leonard can't be on Team USA because of his injury history, and now I understand they're on different teams, so it's different people calling the shots. It is ridiculous that Embiid is playing, given his health status, which has been as bad as Kawhi Leonard's health status has been lately. Embiid's has been exponentially worse. He's been hobbling on one leg most of the season. Right. He didn't play most of the season. Kawhi Leonard played 68 games. Joel Embiid played 39 games and should have missed the playoffs, but they were so desperate that they were willing to put Embiid out on one leg in the playoffs. So I don't know what's going on there. By the way, he fouled out in the game against Canada, which I think was, am I wrong about this? That was an exhibition game, right?
Right.
So in the exhibition game against Canada, Joel Embiid, he fouled out 12 minutes into the game.
Yeah.
It's pathetic. And obviously he's not healthy. I mean, I don't understand what the Sixers are doing, because they ultimately call the shots. They're paying him the money. They're paying his salary, so they can tell him, you can't be playing on Team USA because you're not healthy. You're not even playing in the regular season.
Right.
And you're playing on Team USA. This is ridiculous.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a great player, obviously, but with his health situation, he has no business playing on Team USA. Another story, DeMar DeRozan to the Kings. To me, I think, I mean, this is a much more minor deal than the others. I mean, DeMar DeRozan is not like some type of huge superstar, although to me, I think adding a scorer to your backcourt could be pretty significant. The only issue I would have with this is, I mean, not really an issue, but it's not an issue, but, you know, DeMar DeRozan, you don't really want as your number one guy. I would say, like, he's much more of a, like, second or third option, I would say. But, you know, like I said about the West, anybody can kind of go on a run, seems like. And adding a scorer to your backcourt can be very significant. I mean, the Kings, they were a bubble team, basically. They just missed the playoffs because they lost their second play-in game. So it's a good move. And by the way, it's not that much money. They're not paying him that much money. It's only like 3 years, $74 million, I think it is.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of where his career is going to go to die, though. I kind of forgot he even existed when he was on the Bulls, and they didn't really do anything with him. And the Sacramento Kings are as irrelevant a franchise probably as there is at least in the NBA. But so I feel like this is where he's going to go to sort of be completely forgotten about and have like a good game once in a while, but it'll be like 10:30 on a Sunday in February.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the Kings, they always play late, obviously.
Yeah.
It's a bit of I mean, just like all these West Coast teams. I mean, I will say, I wouldn't say it's where his career necessarily goes to die, because I mean, I don't know where he might go after this, or who else they might get. But I mean, to me, I'll always think of DeMar DeRozan as a Raptor. To me,
Right.
I'll always primarily think of him as a Raptor. That's
Yes.
just how I view him.
Agreed.
But I mean, I think I still think it's a good move for the Kings, but it's just, yeah, I see what you're saying a little bit. But like 3 years, 74 million. I think that's a pretty good deal for an option like him. Did you see Jontay? Speaking of Raptors, Jontay Porter, he pled guilty.
Oh, the guy with the gambling thing? Yeah. What did he plead guilty to?
He pled guilty to, hold on a second. Let me just pull this up. It was like conspiracy and wire fraud. Wait, let me just pull it up for a second. So he played. So here it is. So he pleads guilty in case. Hold on a second. So he pleads. So here it is. He pleads guilty to wire fraud conspiracy in connection to the gambling case. So wire fraud. So wire fraud. What exactly is wire fraud?
Wire fraud is such a fake charge. Wire fraud is like what they charge you with so they can hold you while they get more evidence. Wire fraud is kind of a fake charge.
That's what wire fraud is? It's just bullshit?
Yeah, it's like it could be anything. Like it could be like sending it could be anything. It could be like sending a wrong check or whatever. It could be anything, honestly. Could but it's normally it's what they do to hold you, like if they're trying to gain evidence and whatever. So it's not a big charge. Like you very rarely go to really prison for wire fraud.
Well, he pleaded guilty to it.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean he's going to go to prison.
Right. No, that's true. I mean, it says the estimated sentencing guidelines are 41 to 51 months for the max sentence for wire fraud conspiracy. I mean, I highly doubt Jontay Porter's going to actually get prison time for this. He might, maybe a little, but I don't think he'll face like any big time charges for this. I mean, I think that seems unlikely. How much time in prison did what's his name, Tim Donaghy, spend? Do you know?
Probably about 2 years, I think.
Okay, I mean, like in this case, I don't think it's going to be that much. I mean, obviously, it's a very more than anything. I think it's a really big deal, just not just legally, but in terms of his career. Like he totally got himself blackballed from. I mean, he literally got himself banned from the NBA. One of the dumbest things I can imagine a professional athlete. Betting against yourself has to be the dumbest thing you can do as a professional athlete. There's no way you're not going to get caught doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Did you see? So I don't. Did you see this DraftKings story? They're going to sell. They're apparently VSIN, which is DraftKings might sell VSIN, which is if you don't know what VSIN is, it's Brent Musburger's gambling network.
You're gonna have to take this one because I don't know anything about this.
You don't know anything. Okay, so I know a little bit about this. I want to talk about the story a little bit. So DraftKings is looking to. They have let's just say DraftKings right now has a little bit of buyer's remorse. 3 years ago, they purchased VSIN. VSIN stands for Vegas Sports Information Network, which is so basically right now they're under the umbrella of DraftKings. And it's owned by Brent Musburger. They purchased it 3 years ago for $70 million. And now apparently they're not too happy with it. They're having a little bit of, like I said, buyer's remorse, and it evidently losing money off of it, and they're looking to buy it, and they're looking to basically sell it back to Brent Musburger. And people are comparing it to like what happened with Barstool and Penn. But yeah, apparently with DraftKings, I mean, I have very surface level knowledge of this. I just wanted to talk about the story a little bit, which is that they might end up selling it back to Brent Musburger. And I think proof that they're not making much money off of it is not that many people have actually heard of VSIN. I don't know if you. Yeah, so it's not like I don't know what made DraftKings think this was going to be like this big move 3 years ago, but $70 million, it seems like a pretty big waste.
Yeah, it would be a waste because I've never heard of this thing in my entire life. So I don't think that I'm in a minority. So,
and by the way, you gamble a lot too.
Correct.
Both of us do. So if we haven't heard of it, it's pretty telling, I would say.
Correct, which is probably why it's getting sold back.
Yeah, because he's well, Dan Le Batard is under the DraftKings umbrella now.
I did know that, I think, but they have like their own channel or some shit.
Yeah, they have like their own channel, but it's all under the DraftKings banner. Like DraftKings, it's like they're putting out a lot of, I mean, it's not just DraftKings. I think it's all the casinos and online casinos that are putting out like a lot of content.
Yeah.
Like podcast content. Like Mike Francesa's podcast is sponsored by Bet Rivers.
I mean, yeah, it's funny because it's become almost such an oversaturated market now.
An oversaturated market in terms of gambling?
Like how many sites there are and stuff like that. Like you just said, what was the one that you just said?
Bet Rivers.
Yeah, and then Fanatics has a sports book.
Yeah.
And then ESPN Bet. ESPN Bet isn't even legal in New York yet. Is another one. Like it's crazy how many. But yeah, I've never. So that's also an issue with stuff like this. VSIN is there's such a big market that it's tough to make. It's really tough to make things stand out.
Yeah. Like in terms of sports gambling, because once it became legal in so many states, there's just been a whole explosion of it, like of sports gambling sites.
Right.
And yeah, it is a bit of I guess you could say it's a bit of an oversaturation, although it's kind of good for us. I mean, the more options, the better, I would say.
I agree. I'm just saying that it's an oversaturated market now.
Yeah. I would say I agree with that. I mean, but I don't know how much. Like the thing is, I think that a lot since sports gambling became legal, they started to like put podcasts that didn't necessarily have much. They weren't specifically about gambling, like the Dan Le Batard show. Like it's not like strictly a gambling show. It's just a sports show that might talk about gambling. Francesa doesn't talk about gambling much. Like ever since it became legal, it seemed like the sports gambling companies were putting out these shows that weren't like sports shows, regular sports shows.
Right. Well, they're just advertising at that point, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's smart on their part, but and it's also like a lot of the same people that like would listen to a show that would listen to a sports show that would also gamble. It's much of the same demographic. So I don't know. So I do want to talk about the story a little bit. The corner on Minnesota, on the Vikings, Khyree Jackson passed away. He played in college at Alabama and Oregon. He died. It was a car accident. It sounds like the car that hit him was racing. Like it sounds like apparent. Like it seems based on what I know, he was a passenger. He wasn't driving, and there may have been alcohol involved. I don't know if that's true or not. It happened in Maryland. If you drive on highways in like just in the country anywhere, you'll pretty frequently see maniacs racing each other, going like 90 miles an hour and swerving through traffic. It seems like a pretty big problem that we haven't really grappled with. But this is just an incredibly like sad, horrible story.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate about it, any alcohol or whatever.
I'm not saying there was. I'm just saying that's what I heard.
But yeah. I mean, it's horrible. I don't really know what else you could say about it. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
Shocking. And yeah, it just shows you how, anything can happen.
Yeah. But, I mean, some some of this racing stuff on the road, it's just gotten completely out of hand. And by the way, speaking of driving, bad driving, I don't know if you saw this. So Mike Gundy's in hot water because Ollie Gordon, he got arrested for DUI. Ollie Gordon, who was the star running back on Oklahoma State, he got arrested for a DUI. And here is what Mike Gundy had to say about it. Hold on a second. So there's two parts to this. Of Mike Gundy.
It up on my phone. What would be the legal limit? Like in Oklahoma is 0.08 and Ollie was 0.1. So I looked it up and it was based on body weight. Not to get into the legal side of it, but I thought really 2 or 3 beers or 4. I'm not justifying what Ollie did. I'm telling you what decision I made. Well, I thought I've probably done that 1,000 times in my life. And I, it's just fine. So I got lucky. People get lucky. Ollie made a decision that he wished he could have done better. But when I talked to Ollie, I told him, I said, you're lucky you got out light because you make a lot of money to play football. So I looked it up on my phone. What would be the legal limit?
All right.
Like,
All right. So here's that was the first part. Here's part 2. Hold on.
We're in a time where you guys are essentially employees. You guys make lots of money to play this game. It's different than it was 5 years ago. And your punishment's going to be facing the facts. That's why we brought him here today. I said, you're not going into hiding. You're going to face the music. You're going to have to stand up and talk to people and answer questions. And hopefully, more than football, you can learn from the situation you've been in. Because if not, then we have a real issue. But he's going to play. And I'm going to do what we think is best for Oklahoma State football, and I think it's best for Ollie to play. If there's any punishment, it's make him carry the ball 50 times in the first game.
Okay. I mean, I think that last part was probably the dumbest part. I mean, so it strikes me a little bit of Mike Gundy's lack of self-awareness and also lack of accountability for college athletes who do stupid things at big programs just because they're stars. It was just a very sort of Mike Gundy type of thing. I don't know. Did you have any reaction to it?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's not as funny as whatever, to make fun of DUI. It's a very serious situation. Definitely nobody should ever drink and drive, especially in this day and age where you could get an Uber at your fingertips. There was a few stories in the last month of drivers, like the guy who drove into the nail salon after he had 18 beers and killed a cop. And then there was the other one on July 4th. So, yeah, I mean, just never drink and drive. It's very stupid, and it's very stupid thing to downplay. And like he said, he got lucky, but it just takes one time to get unlucky. So, yeah.
Yeah. And he said, I've done it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
That's a pretty unbelievable statement. I mean, I could see if he said, "Oh, maybe I did it once or twice," so he just does this regularly all the time. Also, but also his whole thing is like, look, to me, when you're a college football coach, you're like a leader of young men, and he is just going out there and saying our punishment for him is he's going to get a lot more carries. Like, are you kidding me? How
Yeah.
is that even a punishment at all? That's just what he's supposed to do. He's a running back. That would be like if you punish the quarterback by saying we're going to punish our quarterback by dropping back and throwing a bunch of passes.
Right. No, I agree. It was dumb. The whole thing was dumb.
The whole thing is just dumb, and it goes to show you his lack of just self-awareness, I would say.
Right.
No,
I agree.
Yeah. So there's also a little bit I want to get to with NFL free agency. Brandon Aiyuk is basically unhappy. One of your Arizona State people. He's unhappy with his contract. He's looking at a bunch of other wide receivers like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson are getting paid north of $30 million a year. He's getting paid like $14 million a year. He'll probably get like a 5th-year. He'll probably play under from what I understand, he'll play under like a 5th-year option. I mean, the thing is with the Niners is, I mean, I think I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I will say I think the situation in his case might be a little bit different because the Niners are already paying a bunch of guys. They already paid like they're in a situation where it's like they can't pay everybody, the Niners. But I guess his future seems to be with the Niners right now seems to be sort of like up in the air, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I still think he's just going to get paid. They go through a lot of stories like this every year. I feel like before training camp and stuff like that. So I think this will end the same way. I think he'll still get paid.
Yeah. I mean, it's a similar kind of thing with what's going on with Tua and the Dolphins. Like we know Tua's going to get paid by the Dolphins.
Yes.
The Dolphins don't have much of a chance. And by the way, from the Dolphins' standpoint, I think it's smart because, and by the way, just talking about wide receivers, it's a similar thing with CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
With the Cowboys.
Right.
They also, I think the Niners have a lot more leverage. I think that any team has a lot more leverage with a wide receiver than they would with a quarterback. Like the Dolphins' alternative without Tua is like one of the worst teams in the league.
Right.
Like the bottom of the barrel. So they know that they have to pay Tua the money. And I know Tua's not like healthy all the time, but I mean, he still is a very, very good quarterback, arguably an elite quarterback when he's healthy.
Agreed.
So to me, I don't get this whole like Tua is bad narrative. I think it's just ridiculous. He's just injured quite often. But that doesn't make him bad. He's a good player. And if Trevor Lawrence can get the money that he got, well, Tua is going to get a lot of money too.
Right. No, I agree. And I think he's going to get paid just like I think that Brandon Aiyuk is going to get paid.
Yeah, they're both.
Just a lot of these stories happen before training camp. It's just a lot of fluff.
Yeah. Well, I think it's teams trying to hold out and get the best deal that they can. That's really just all that it is. I mean, rather than just paying them all the money right away. So I know you wanted to talk about that. I want to talk about it too. We had a Malice at the Palace soccer version. This is at Copa America.
Yeah, so it was the Copa America semifinal, and Colombia was playing Uruguay in the semifinal in Charlotte, and at the end of the game, it was all these games in the Copa America have been very how should I say it? They've been very testy. There have been a lot of fouls, a lot of red cards, a lot of kicking, things like that. It's been very very testy. Anyway, they got the game ended. Colombia won the game, and at the end of the game, there was basically a fight in the stands, but the families of Uruguay were in Colombia was outnumbering the fans of Uruguay in the game at the stadium, but the fans of or the family of Uruguay was in a situation where they were, being harassed and whatever by drunk Colombia fans. So Darwin Nunez is a very famous player. He plays for Liverpool, which is one of the biggest clubs in the world. He's one of their best players. He's on $1 million contracts. He's a very famous player, and he went into the stands because his family was there being harassed by Colombia fans, and he had a drink thrown at him, and then he was sparring with them. The police were trying to get him away, and then a Colombia fan hit him. And then Emiliano Martinez, who's another very famous player, he also got into the stands.
He plays for Uruguay or Colombia?
They all play for Uruguay, all the players that went into the stands. And yeah, there was a fight on the field before this happened between the players as the final whistle blew. And then, and then all this went down. Players called out, which they were right about, the lack of security around their families, especially as it pertains to women and children. And I'm always a fan of this, action. I mean, I think that he's going to get suspended. So it's going to be interesting because Uruguay's out. So they're playing under a different governing body than the league soccer that he plays in. So he wouldn't be suspended for league soccer. He'd be suspended for playing for Uruguay whenever. But anyway, I don't think he should be suspended. I mean, if you have your wife and kid there being harassed by drunk fans and there's no protection, I think that it was honestly not that unjustifiable of a response.
So he saw his. Okay, so it's not quite like Malice at the Palace where they just went in there to fight fans.
Right.
This particular player saw his wife and kids being harassed,
right,
by Colombia fans.
Yeah,
and
so did the other Uruguay players who went into the stands.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, so this is a little different than I thought it would be. So, you do bring up a good point about the lack of security. That, I mean, first of all, soccer seems like it's just a wilder sport right now than all the others. Like something like this would not happen in any other major sport other than, I mean, Malice at the Palace, but it was obviously a little bit different, and it's very unlikely to happen, at least in any other major sport, mainly because they have actual security. And by the way, this was in Charlotte, wasn't it?
Yeah, Charlotte.
Okay, so you would think this happened in South America, like
right,
something like this, but it actually happened in Charlotte at Bank of America Stadium. Yeah, I agree. What the hell were they doing with, like, what was security doing? Were they just twiddling their thumbs the whole time?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Yeah.
And there was a fight before the game. I mean, in these, do fans often fight each other at these types of events?
Yes, all the time.
Okay, I figured that was true.
Yes, all the time. That's why if you ever watch soccer in Europe and other countries, they separate the fans.
And I guess they didn't separate the fans here.
No, they don't really. Yeah, no.
Okay, interesting. So the same. Wait, who ended up winning? Who won the game?
Colombia won the game.
Oh, so Colombia won the game. Okay.
Yeah.
So Uruguay
after the game, by the way. Yeah, Uruguay's out. It's Colombia and Argentina are playing in the final.
And so all this, you said all this happened after the game.
Yeah, it was after the game. There was a fight on the field before any of this happened.
What happened with the fight on the field? Who started that?
Uruguay, I think. But it was the whole game. All the games in the Copa America have been even the USA games. There's been a lot of like fouls and smacked around and stuff like that. They've all been very, very physical and testy.
Yeah. Well, I know I know in South America they're crazy about soccer, and in Europe too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's just it's hard for Americans to fathom because we soccer is like where would soccer rank in terms of popularity? Like 6, maybe. Golf is more popular than soccer.
No. Golf is not more popular.
In
I
the
would rank
United
this
States?
ahead of hockey.
No, not in the United States.
Yes.
No way. Soccer
routinely beats it. No, yeah, it routinely beats it in ratings. It routinely beats hockey
in the United States.
Yeah, in the United States.
That is crazy if that's true.
Yeah, I would put it ahead of hockey. Definitely, especially it depends. Like it's not like the MLS, but like the English league, I think, is ahead of it. It always beats hockey in terms of ratings.
Interesting.
I mean, and they're also and they also sell out. Like, I mean, it's because remember, there's a lot of also non-Americans that live in America.
That's obviously true too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting. I didn't know that. So I do want to talk a little bit about baseball. So you wanted to talk about this. Paul Skeens, he was pulled during a no-hitter. He threw 97 pitches.
So this guy who's apparently this guy is I've never heard of this guy in my life, but I heard until yesterday, but this is Livy Dunn's boyfriend, correct?
Well, yeah, that's why I know who he is.
Okay, so he's
a star pitcher. He's a star.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
He was on the he's on the Pirates.
Yeah.
And they were playing somebody yesterday, whatever, and he had 7. Was it a perfect game or a no-hitter?
It was a no-hitter.
So he had 7 innings, right? He threw 7 no-hitter innings.
Correct.
And then the manager didn't let him come out for the 8th inning. I know that there's a baseball podcast on this channel. I know a lot of people on this channel like baseball, so I'll apologize to them, but this is the truth. This is a glaring example of why the sport sucks. I mean, you have something very, very unique, and that's something that draws eyes to baseball, and something that's very rare, and it maybe happens once a year, twice a year, maybe, and you pull the guy because he has too many pitches or something.
Well,
I mean,
he threw 97
This is
pitches.
ridiculous.
Well, you know what? I don't agree necessarily. First of all, it depends on the situation. I'm not saying that there should be a situation where there's an arbitrary number of pitchers, an arbitrary number of pitches that you can't go over. I don't agree with that. However, this was 97 pitches. That is a lot to throw. There's a good chance he may have been too tired to even finish it. Like, okay, so if you were to just say like, it's not a given that the next 2 innings would have even likely continued as a no-hitter. But if you were to say like, what if a pitcher throws 7 scoreless innings and he's just too tired to go out there for the 8th inning, and he's probably just going to give up a hit anyway?
But you don't know that. You don't know that, and
you don't know that. But like, if you're making like a risk calculation, and you're just like, okay, he's probably going to be giving up one anyway, there really is no point in putting him out there when, in reality, the most important thing should be to win the game. That should be the number one priority. And also, preserving your pitchers, that should also be a priority. I don't want it to be like what the Mets did with Christian Scott the other day. But no-hitters are pretty common now, actually, I would say. They happen all the time. But that's kind of besides the point.
I mean, I think this is just such an example. I think that baseball does so much to get into its own way. It's insane.
Well, but
this is one of the reasons.
But this is not so much the sport of baseball. Like, even if you do have it, it's not so much the sport of baseball. This is about this particular manager pulling. But like, my whole thing is 97 pitches is in fact a lot. Like, if you were to look at, I mean, I don't know how much he could. I don't know. Look, I would tell you I agree. If the reason he pulled him out is because he said he had too many pitches, I would agree that's ridiculous. However, if he was too tired to go out to the 8th inning and he just was in no shape to continue the game, then yeah, that's the right move. Because otherwise, that's just a waste of time, and he's probably just going to end up, giving up a walk or giving up a hit anyway. I mean, giving up another hit anyway. To me, I think the number one priority should always be to win the game. That should always be the number one priority, not to chase after a no-hitter. If you're a manager, that's always what they should do. I mean, sure, but there have been times when they use like a pitch count. Like, I don't think there should be a pitch count in particular that says you can't continue with, X number of pitches. I don't think it should work that way because that's very arbitrary. But if a pitcher is just not in shape to go out there, even if he does have a no-hitter, then no, don't put him out there. That's just a massive waste of time.
It's an entertainment industry, though, and the perfect game.
You're right, but it's not the job of a manager or a coach to entertain. It's their job to win.
I mean, I don't know. I just think it was so dumb, and it's just so like there's so much stuff that goes on in baseball that's so stupid that they get nervous. This is one of them.
Well, talking about, I want to talk a little bit about the Mets. I want to talk a little, not so much about maybe a little bit about the Yankees, but mostly about the Mets. Well, first of all, the Yankees right now are a dumpster fire. Both of us are Yankee haters, so it makes us feel kind of vindicated about it. It's good for both of us. The Mets are actually, if the season ended today, they'd be a wild card team. Now it sounds like it. Now I know what you're thinking. It doesn't really matter that much that they're a wild card team. If the season were to end today, although it does pretty drastically affect their strategy in terms of trades. If they actually have a chance, they're much less likely to trade. Like if the season was over, they'd probably trade Alonso at some point. But because it's not, because they actually have a chance, like it does pretty drastically change what the market for them, I would say. So it's a pretty big deal. I don't know if you saw. I mean, I don't normally care that much about All-Star games, but Alonso actually made the All-Star game, and he really had no business making the All-Star game. He's not having a good year. But the way it works is that every team kind of has to have some representation. And I think it's really just because they wanted him in the home run derby. But really, I don't really think Alonso really hasn't had an all-star year. He hasn't been good this year. It's part of the reason they talked about trading him. I think Severino would have been a better pick to make the all-star team. I will say I don't really like all-star games very much in general. Like, I'm not big on any of the all-star games, especially the Pro Bowl. I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
No, not really. I'm not big into baseball, but I mean, the All-Star game used to be like a very interesting event. But yeah, I didn't know that they had to have one. Is that a new rule that they had to have one?
I think it is. Yeah.
Player on every game. That's kind of stupid. So if a team wins like 16 games in the first half of the season, they still have to have a player.
No, I don't. I think it's stupid too. I think it's a marketing, branding type of thing. I'm not big on, like I said, I'm not big on all-star games, but I do think that the one sport that has the biggest disadvantage is football. So I do want to talk about some of this a little bit. Joe Burrow suggested that the NFL go to an 18-game schedule and have the Pro Bowl in the middle of the season. Just in the middle of the season, which I think sounds like a really crazy idea because, with injuries and things like that, if a player gets injured in the Pro Bowl in the middle of the season, and just have an all-star break, just like they do in baseball and basketball. You said it on part of my take.
Well, I think everybody knows it's a foregone conclusion that the NFL is going to go to an 18-game season.
Yeah.
Point. I don't care about the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl is stupid. But all-star games, I think the NBA is the best all-star game. But the NBA skills competition is what makes it the best all-star game. But all all-star games are kind of stupid. But I do agree that the all-star thing should be in the middle of the season rather than the end of the season. It should go to 18 games, an extra bye week, and then you have the Super Bowl on President's Day weekend, so it's essentially a Saturday. Yeah, I agree. I think that this was not like as big a story because I think that everybody and their mother kind of knows that it's going to go to an 18-game season. They're not. It's not sustainable to keep it at 17 games.
Yeah,
and
can't be an odd number,
especially when they're going to see. Well, we could get even more money from an 18-game season if we add an extra game. And I think I think that they're the only sport right now that does an odd number of games. And it's stupid to have an odd number of games because then you have it, especially in football, because then you have an odd number of home or away games.
Yeah. Well, I think that
stupid.
Yeah. Well, I think that when it comes to all-star games and skills competitions, football is at a natural disadvantage compared to all the other sports. Like in basketball, you have the slam dunk contest and the three-point contest. In baseball, you have the home run derby. In football is not football is just a sport where people want to watch the game. Nobody wants to watch a skills competition in football. Like NFL is king, but they're totally not king when it comes to this particular context. Like football will always naturally have a disadvantage just from the nature of the game.
Yeah.
In this particular regard.
Yeah, I agree. But I think they're probably also I don't think the home games is this big argument because I think also if they go to 18, they're probably going to add more international games as well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
it just stands to make more sense. But it's starting to did you see the thing someone tweeted out? It was that guy. I'm going to try and find it. It was that guy. Dov
Kleiman.
How do you say the guy's name?
Dov Kleiman, I think it is.
Yeah, he tweeted out. I'm gonna try and find it. I'm not sure if I can find it, but yeah, here it is. He tweeted out, "This is what you need," which is just whatever. But this is the cost to watch every NFL game this year if you had every streaming service that they're putting the NFL on, and it was $73 for YouTube TV a month, which is that's extortionary. $6 a week for Peacock, $15 a month for Peacock, $15 a month for Prime, $7 a month for Netflix, $11 a month for ESPN Plus, $22 a month for NFL Plus, and if you add that up times the NFL season, it's $700 to watch NFL games, which is getting crazy now.
Yeah.
And I think the NFL and I think the NFL I think the NFL is moving farther. It's going to move farther away from so many 1 o'clock games and 4 o'clock games on CBS and Fox, and much more towards this YouTube TV, Peacock, Prime Video, Netflix, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it. I mean, for now, there's still going to be a lot of games on cable, but
you know what the funny thing is that a lot of people, myself included, have cut the cord. I would say most people in our generation don't have cable, but especially people who move into new apartments. But one of the reasons that people don't have cable is because it's like $200 a month for cable, which is just out of this world. But with all the stuff that's on streaming services now, you have to have every streaming service. It kind of comes to the same price. It kind of canceled itself out.
Yeah, I guess that could be true. But I mean, the thing with cable is that you're paying for a bunch of stuff you don't want. That's basically the issue with cable.
Right. But I mean, you right. Right. Yeah. Like if you want to get, you can't have like a la carte channels. So like if you want to get ESPN on cable, you have to also pay for like Discovery Channel and a bunch of bullshit. But it's just funny that it's gone all this way. Like ESPN Plus is the stupidest thing. Like if there's a fight on ESPN Plus, you're paying $11 a month for ESPN Plus, and then if there's a fight on ESPN Plus, you have to pay the pay-per-view too.
Really?
Like, yeah,
that's ridiculous. That's
so
nuts.
like, it doesn't really do me any good to be subscribed to ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
If I still have to pay the fee. Like,
you think one day the Super Bowl will be on pay-per-view?
100%.
Yeah, I think so too.
You have to remember, nobody, boxing was one of the biggest sports in this country at one point, and heavyweight fights would always be on regular TV until the boxers realized that you could make a ton more money on pay-per-view, and all those promoters and stuff. Yeah, I think 100%. I think there's going to be no. I mean, I don't know if you're with me on this, but I think there's going to be no. There's going to be television, but there's going to be no TV in like 20 years. It's just going to be services. I don't think there's going to be any television in like 20 years. Networks are dead.
Yeah, it looks like it's going in that direction. I mean, I haven't really thought about it much, but it looks like it is going in that direction.
I mean, one of the biggest evidence is like NBC runs Peacock, and they take the biggest soccer games. Like I said, these soccer games are getting bigger audiences than the NHL. They're getting like 2 million an event. The biggest soccer games they moved to Peacock. They moved a NFL game to Peacock. They could put it on NBC, but they're starting the slow transition to everything being on Peacock.
Yeah. So, all right. On that note, we got to get going. We're out of time. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. This was Moving the Goalpost. You can follow the show at MTGP ETB on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Empty the Bench Network at ETB Network. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart, Liam at Liam MTGP. All right, we'll be back next week. See you guys.